Righto, what can be done has been done. You've managed to give what amounts to my front porch just a bit of a sweep. Feeling in better spirits now and less angry. In the end, I think I'm being a little unreasonable with the Bunnings people, our huge company, and the warehouse, who've got many stores that stock many things and are bound to run out of stuff or occasionally not stock things at some stores and at others. And I don't know. I don't really do mornings well, and it had been a long day already when I did the last video, so it's a weird one. We're doing 2 videos for today. But hey, you know, this is all about sort of going through and me fucking up so I can tell you guys how not to, I guess. One of the things you probably want to do if you've got long distance transport to do and stuff is do a bit of logistics. You know, ring ahead, make sure the place that you're going to at great length is actually going to stock the thing that you're after, and it is at the price you expected, and blah. So yeah, I don't know, it was nice to have a vent this morning and rant and rave and be all tradie and swearing at other people's work. Anyway, let's have a look at what I achieved. I actually expected at this stage things would look quite shit, but that's not too bad so far, given it's just fence planks and crap. As we see, I sort of was going to sort of explain before, but it's just a little easier to just show you now. The shelving unit goes at the end there, not quite at roof height. The offset there is because that's where all windows are going to go. One of the downsides of not being able to get the shelving unit I wanted is that this one is a little less deep, so the entire length at the moment from the back of this shelving unit to the back of this frame is 1850 millimeters or 1845 millimeters, so just over 6 foot. And obviously my sleeping space within this space goes from about this pillow along, so I need 180 centimeters, 1.8 meters, 6 foot, whatever, minimum to sleep in, unless I'm sleeping curled into a bit of a ball, which I actually do tend to do. So what we're going to do to compensate for this not being the extra 10 centimeters or so that I wanted it to be, is we'll pack the back out of it with foam, or possibly bits of scrap wood or something like that, before we put our foam end wall on and do all our windows and well, put the foam end wall on. So all the walls and ceiling and everything will go on, and a hatch will get cut in for my door next stage. Potentially before then I'll do all the painting, which is basically all of these subframe units need to be all black. Lower section of the couch, the bit that I'm using as a frame's all black, and then we will be using just ordinary black bed sheets to re-upholster the cushions. The cool thing there is when they get a bit older and mankier and stuff like that, instead of bothering to clean them, I'll then use them in one of the later stages in the project where we begin to make the structure ready for total outdoor use. Foam's okay, but it's not that waterproof over the long term. And what I'm going to do there is an idea a mate of mine's dad suggested, where it's kind of like poor man's fiberglass. You basically coat your structure in glue and or paint, lay sheets over top of it so that the paint soaks through, and paint more paint over top, and gives you a uniform continuous layer that's got a little bit of additional strength to it, because it's, you know, fabric based and stuff. So yeah, he's used this method before for a couple of things. It's kind of like a paper mache, I guess, or yeah, like I said, poor man's fiberglass. So anyway, backing up again, especially for patron friends, you guys saw some really rough sketches before you sent me money, so this is the stuff I drew for you. There's the end frame, so no windows in this end. This end in a normal setup would be facing in the southerly direction. It's just a normal end wall. That's where all the windows would go, and that would normally be facing north. Here it's facing south, but as you can see, that's the only place I've got a bit of a view, so I get to look out over Littleton Port there. So yeah, this bit here, basically you've got a little bit of spot, as you can see. Put knickknacks and doodads on it, and maybe some ornaments or whatever. I may even build an additional mid-layer shelf in here. There's enough room for me head without banging my head if this cushion's in place. If it's not in place and I lie down too fast, I do catch the edge of this, but we found that out the hard way and won't find out again. And then this unit here, we can bolt lights into this, light fixtures and things like that, and also hang things off it, like small items and whatnot. Over here, this frame basically is just here to stop the roof sagging, the section, and also to put lights in. However, this vertical here and this one here, let's just back it up a bit, left and right are what will form my door space. This has already been commented by the guys having a look. Holy crap, that's really small. For those of you who've been watching the videos, you'll already be familiar with how small a space I can be quite comfortable in. This unit has double the volume of the most of the tent and hutchie and bivvy type structures I was using in Queenstown quite comfortably for 4 months. It's a lot wider at the base as well. So for me, this is actually quite a bit of headroom in space. But the cool thing is, by minimizing volume and keeping it this tiny, it makes it incredibly easy to heat. And in fact, because I'm making it out of foam and possibly lining sections of it with reflective mylar and stuff, I may not even need to heat it. I think probably the biggest problem with this thing is going to be keeping it cool in summer, which is why we've got a huge vent under the shelving unit at the end here, where my feet will poke off the end of the I suppose we call it the bed. And also all these little shims in here, because the shelving unit up this end was not quite the dimensions we wanted. We needed to shim out a little further from the width of the couch for everything to line up nicely. But that's also meant that now, instead of just this thickness of wood, we've got double that thickness, because the foam layer comes straight across the front of these frames. So we've got about a sort of an inch or so of space dropping down either side of the couch, right around, for, again, more ventilation and stuff. I've found that in structures this small, your biggest problems are ventilation for air in the heat and damp when it's cold. Not the cold itself. Again, in a small space, once you seal it up, it warms up hella quick. Especially when you're using a little bit of text like this. I've shown these before. These are little USB lights, not plugged into a battery at the moment, so I can't show you, but you just tap them like that and they turn on. They radiate quite a bit of heat, like pretty close to a candle's worth of heat, just because of the way they process. And I've got 3 or 4 of those. I intend to make mounts for them, as I said, all along here, so that I've got sort of nice yellow mood lighting. You can dim it. You can have all 4 on or just 1, for depending on what you're doing. Also got the headlamp that we generally use for point light when I'm working, doing art. So yeah, all of those things by themselves, just electrically, will probably heat the space quite well. If not, obviously we've got all of these little subframes where I can build little mini candle holder units in out of aluminium so they don't set the place on fire. And that sort of thing will generate a lot of heat. The only other thing I had thought to do was potentially create a gas cooker unit in this middle space in the cubby that was all ventilated and heat lined and set up so that it didn't burn things to death. But when I tried to do, or I did successfully do gas heating in one of my old nano houses, I was using a very, very shitty, like one of those sort of like, it's kind of like a briefcase gas cooker, and it runs on like a little butane can. They're absolute crap. They output very little heat and stuff, and that utterly cooked that space. Like, I think my record was going from -3 degrees inside and 80% humidity to 32 degrees and 20% humidity in 14.5 minutes. And that was with no insulation, and half of one wall was windows. So yeah, like, just gas is incredibly powerful. These days, on the other hand, under here, I've got this little doodad which runs on decent sort of camping gas stuff. It's still a butane mix, but it's got some propane and isopropyl in it. It's a hell of a lot more powerful fuel, and the gas cooker itself is 3.5 kilowatts. So if I ran that on its absolute lowest setting for about 1 minute in this space once it's insulated, so yeah, as you can see, I don't think we're going to need to use gas heating, which is great. I really do try to not use fossil fuels where at all possible. I am actually very interested in playing around with pyrolysis and a few other things to see if I can, where I do need to use fossil fuels for running things like this, if I can perhaps work on maybe using synthetic gas, or yeah, there's a lot of different experiments I'd like to do with structures like this once I've got a little bit of my own space in an outdoor environment. But the main processes with this one next are going to be, yeah, obviously get it clad, get it all painted inside and outside and looking nice, then get the windows in probably as part of that process as well, do the upholstery and everything, make it look pretty. And then we will go to solar panel installation. The setup does allow for me to install it actually on the structure, but as I mentioned in the video before, that's not very effective in the current site, so we'll probably put that on an extension cable. And yeah, later on in the piece, we could use a couple of wooden pallet crates across the front here and create a little deck with an awning coming off that thing, which would be a really cool outdoor cooking area that was sheltered from the weather. And I can also create at one end or behind the unit like a squat toilet thing, or I could do a stand-up unit that's got a shower attached to it. And one of the drawings I did, I actually took this entire unit and raised it by about 2 or 3 feet on a plinth, that's kind of like next to a stand-up, like think of it like a portaloo sort of size structure that you can walk into standing up, and that's got a shower and stuff in it, which would be on the southerly end where there's no other windows or anything. So that'd be on this end of the structure. And yeah, you can kind of walk in there, and then you sort of come up some stairs to go into the main entrance area. So the last thing to show you is headroom. Just with all my gear on, this is not how I normally sit in here, but as you can see, if I sit up straight, I can just touch the ceiling. When I'm in the area where the foam will be, that's a frame. The foam goes above that, so yeah, it's basically the kind of height I'm used to working with. If I just move my gear, that was just by dropping a pillow. Now you can see we're like, whee, no problems. So it's enough setup room. For people who are used to, you know, living in a house where there's, you know, 2 to 4 feet of ceiling space above you, this would probably feel a little claustrophobic. But for me, because I've spent years living in places like this and doing similar projects, this is really, really quite comfortable. And as I said, the science behind it is way better. Being able to heat and ventilate this space is so much easier and more energy efficient, and therefore cheaper on energy and the amount of, you know, either fuel systems or electricity systems or whatever I have to use to actively cool or heat air within this space. And then obviously making the entire structure out of insulation foam is going to tend to sort of make what I do thermally inside stay that way for longer, because that's how insulation works. Anyway, speaking of which, over here going through the door, instead of your standard open this way door, we're going to do a hatch. I've done a few units like this before and found that hatch doors, while they're less standard and they're a bit weird, you could, you know, grab it at the bottom, open, get out of the way, and then get under it, and you put some little props into the frame so it stays up. They're really, really effective. They're great in winter for getting in and out of the structure, because you've got an area directly in front of your door where you can sit down, take your shoes off and stuff without getting all your mucky, wet shit inside. And they're great in summer because they can keep the sun off and stuff, because you've got a giant eave kind of thing hanging down over the top there. So we're going to go with that, plus hatches are just way cool and spaceshipy looking, so choice. Anyway, hope that was interesting for everybody, particularly our patron friends. Cheers heaps again for the cash. I hope you're pleased with the progress so far, and I will do another one of these blogs as soon as I have time and I'm able to resource the necessary materials. I have the cash, I'm just waiting on the hardware store to get their act together and get back to me about whether I can get this XPS foam that I want, or whether I'm going to have to go with ordinary polystyrene. But as far as the structure goes at the moment, either would work. One thing I am finding is it's a little wiggly, particularly towards this. This is a pretty good solid frame here. But this one here, which has got very minimal support, and this one's got a lot of weight on it and not a great deal of support. I think I may get some just cheap thin pieces of wood to lock just inside the frame along the full length of the structure, front to back, just to add a little bit more rigidity. Other things we could do is, I've got plenty of tie wire and stuff that I use for projects like this. I could anchor that at each corner and do an X corner to corner, and then that corner to this corner, and create a stressed frame, like wire stressed frame, kind of like how old biplanes were stuck together. And I could do that to a lot of the walls where I don't have windows happening or doors or anything like that as well. So there's quite a few ways to make this more rigid. Normally we wouldn't have to bother if we were using plywood, because plywood would become a stressed skin. It would be anchored to the frame and the whole thing would be rigid as hell. But because we're using foam that doesn't have a lot of torsional strength and stretch load strength and shit, and I don't want to think that one day when I'm wheeling this thing along or moving it that it flexes so much that it, you know, cracks a wall open or something. That would be a pain in the neck. So right, that's enough ranting from me. It's getting a bit dark. Hope everyone's stoked. I'm actually pretty stoked with this. It's just kind of like a weird, strange, rustic 4-poster bed routine I've got going here or something. But yeah, this should work really well for me, and hopefully we'll be able to complete the outer shell of the structure soon. Pity it wasn't today. There's going to be a really huge storm tonight, but that's why we're underneath a patio. And I'll take some of the shade sails and random bits of tarpaulin I've got stacked out here for just such a circumstance, and lay them over the top of the frame I've created just to sort of keep any additional rain off. So we're all good. Yep, that's enough for me today.